Hello, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Wednesday, May 15th, and we've got the full 2024 NFL schedule. And of course, we will break it all down. The 2024 New York Jets official schedule has been released a couple minutes ago, and we will break it all down today on the podcast. An exciting day for football fans, Jets fans, whatever team you root for. It's an exciting day. Schedule release day is always another big step in the offseason. You know, you've got free agency, you've got the draft, then you've got the schedule release day, then you have OTAs, and little by little here, we're creeping into the middle of May. We're almost into June. We're getting closer and closer to July, which will be the beginning of training camp. So exciting time to be an NFL fan. The weather's getting better, although in the tri-state area, there's been rain almost every single day. But in terms of warm weather, it's starting to feel like training camp. It's starting to feel like, all right, football's back here in a couple of months, and that's always exciting. Today is Wednesday, September 5th. This is episode 308 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you, as always, for joining me. We are going to break down all angles of the New York Jets 2024 schedule. We'll break down the matchups, give you some potential predictions, record prediction, not official record prediction. I usually do that closer to the season when I do my full season preview. Also, obviously, do my full division predictions, all that stuff. So that'll be closer August, September towards the season, but we'll kind of do just a baseline, what I see in this schedule, how many wins I see the New York Jets getting, and that's about it. And then, of course, we'll break down many other things. Primetime games, toughest stretches, easiest stretches, toughest games, games to look for, some other kind of miscellaneous, I guess, stats and numbers that I want to throw at you when you look at this 18-week, 17-game slate. So we'll throw it up on screen here. Now, I've got to give credit to one of the most popular Jet content creators out there. That is Matt O'Leary. He actually released the Jets schedule last night pretty much, and he did make one minor tweak to it today, which was switching the Week 14 and Week 18 Dolphins games, where Week 14, instead of it being home, is going to be away, and Week 18, instead of being away, is now going to be home. But other than that, he nailed the schedule, got it from a source, and he nailed it last night. But here is the official New York Jets schedule from the Jets themselves, from Jets.com, the official schedule. Here it is. We, of course, knew opening up the season September 9th, Monday Night Football against the San Francisco 49ers. Week 2, the New York Jets will face the Tennessee Titans on the road September 15th. 1 o'clock game on CBS. Some of us thought that maybe they would stay out west, stay in Arizona, get their 2 West Coast trips, get their 2 furthest trips of the season out of the way. That's not the case, other than obviously the London trip being the other furthest. But that one, they will still be on the road. So they open up with 2 road games. And I think this one caught some by surprise. I think a lot of people knew or felt that we would face New England, but not on Thursday night. So they go from playing 2 road games, one of them being on Monday night. So they'll have 2 back-to-back short weeks. Plus having to come home, they'll face the Patriots on Thursday Night Football in Week 3. Week 4, they will face the Denver Broncos at home. Week 5, they will face the Minnesota Vikings in London. Week 6, they will face the Buffalo Bills on Monday Night Football at home. So a little rematch of last year's Week 1 showdown. Week 7, they will be back on primetime, short week against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday Night Football. That will be on the road. Week 8, they will face the New England Patriots on the road. Week 9, they will face the Houston Texans on Thursday Night Football. So another short week. They will face Stroud, Diggs, and the Texans. Texans will be back at MetLife for the second year in a row to face this Jet team. Week 10, they will face the Cardinals on the road. Week 11, they will face the Colts back at home. Another year, another home Sunday Night Football game. We got a home Sunday Night Football game last year against the Chiefs. They get that again here against the Colts. The Jets could have elected to take their bye week after that London game, which would have been Week 6. They elected not to, and now they get a Week 12 bye. So those are the first 11 weeks. Now here are the final 6 weeks, or I should say, 6 weeks, 6 games. Week 12, they will face the Seahawks at home. Week 13, or I apologize, Week 13, they will face the Seahawks at home. Week 14, they will face the Dolphins on the road. Week 15, they will face the Jaguars on the road. Week 16, they will face the Rams at home. Week 17, they will face the Bills on the road. And Week 18, they will close out the season with the Dolphins at home, which I've got to get this out right away. This is the first time the New York Jets have faced, or I should say have hosted rather, their last game of the season. Since 2016 was the last time the New York Jets had a home game in the last week of the season. They won that game back in 2016, 30-10. If you remember correctly, that was Fitzpatrick's last game as a New York Jet before they handed the quarterback reins over to Josh McCown the next year. And the Jets beat the Bills in the last week of that season, and then they played them in week 1 the next year and lost. So not to bring back bad memories, but it's been forever. And it's kind of been frustrating as a Jet fan that we've always had to play on the road to end the year. We've always had a stretch of road games, whether it was last year having to go on the road to close out the season, or even 2 years ago having to go Seattle, Miami back-to-back to close out the year. It was just, it always felt like, come on, give us a home game to close out the season. Maybe this is a game similar to the Bills-Dolphins last year where it's for the division, it's for a playoff positioning, whatever it might be, and maybe it gets flexed. That's why it's TBD. We will see. Obviously, they always wait until week 17 closes until they figure out the week 18 time slots for those games. So that's something we will find out way down the road into January. Don't want to rush time too much. But that's your 2024 New York Jets schedule. 8 home games, 9 road games, of course, this year for the AFC. Now I will put my face back up here on the screen and get all the other stuff here back up on the screen. So that's the schedule. Now let's break just some of the numbers down. They obviously open up the season on Thursday Night Football versus the Patriots. So something interesting to note, Thursday Night Football will open up this season with back-to-back AFC showdowns, not counting the week 1 Thursday night game that is technically on NBC. The actual Prime Video official start of Thursday Night Football is week 2. That'll be the Dolphins Bills. And in week 3 will be the Jets Patriots. So Jets open up on primetime again on Thursday night. I'll be honest, I don't love the Thursday night game. I'll kind of give you more of why here in a little bit. But that's that. They maxed out on 6 primetime games. As I mentioned, I could see them getting to a 7th if they get to week 18 and that game means something. If you recall last year, the New York, like I said, the Dolphins and the Bills were flexed into Sunday Night Football game 272. And then even if you go further back in 2009, the New York Jets were flexed against the Bengals in the last week of the season because it was a win and in game. In 2009, the Jets, of course, ended up winning that game and then ended up beating the Bengals the very next week in the wild card round. So we could see something like that, but that's something way down the road. Either way, as of now, they've got 6 primetime games and 7 standalone games through the first 11 weeks because your one other standalone, if you want to call it prime time, is that London game, which is 9:30 Eastern time in the morning here in the States. 2 Monday night games, 2 Sunday night games, 2 Thursday night games. So the primetime games are pretty evenly distributed. Those Monday nights are the Niners and the Bills. Thursday nights are the Patriots and the Texans. Sunday nights are the Steelers and the Colts. 4 of their 6 primetime games are home. They will be home for the Patriots, Bills, Texans, Colts. They will be away for the 49ers and the Steelers. Something else to note, the Jets have 8 total home games, like I said, this year. 4 of them are on primetime. So, as people like to say, the 9 a.m. beers in the MetLife parking lot, you're not going to get too many of those this season. And I've always said it, I like primetime games. Being there is great. The next day sucks, win or lose, because if you're work or go to school or whatever, you got to do something the next day, and you get back from MetLife after sitting in that parking lot, sitting through traffic for an hour. You don't usually get back sometimes to your house until like 1, 2 in the morning. The next day sucks. So I will admit primetime games are fun in the moment. They are fun to go to from a perspective of the environments are always great, especially week 1 last year. And I expect those environments to be like that again this year. But, I still love, I always say it, there's nothing better to me than waking up on a football Sunday. The sun is shining. You've got that crisp fall breeze, and you get ready, whether you're at the stadium, it's a nice day out, not a cloud in the sky, you're sitting inside of MetLife, 1:00 game kickoff. There's nothing better than that. I've always said it. But Aaron Rodgers, is this his last year in the NFL? We don't know. He's making a comeback from a torn Achilles, something we've never a comeback from a torn Achilles like we've never seen before. So the NFL is going to maximize every little bit of Rodgers they can. So this doesn't come by much of a surprise. But yeah, only 4 games this year will be at 1:00 at home, I should say. Now, even more crazy, the Jets' first 11 weeks of the season, they will have 1 home game at 1:00. The other 3 will come in the latter part. Seahawks, Rams, Dolphins, all of whom they play after their bye week, those are all 1:00 home games. So really, for the first 11 weeks of the season, the New York Jets have 5 home games. Only one of those 5 home games will be at 1:00. So if you're a fan of 1:00 games, this is not the schedule for you. And I'll admit, like I just said, I like 1:00 games. They're my favorite. I like a couple primetime games. I don't know. I'm not going to be too critical. I like 1:00 games. I've always said that, but primetime games are fine. Hey, if we're winning, that's all that matters. So really 7 standalone games in the first 11 weeks because of that London game. 6 primetime total, which, by the way, is history. There's never been an NFL team in NFL history to have 6 primetime games in their first 11 weeks. So the Jets will be on primetime TV a lot. And for other NFL fans out there that are like, oh, I don't want to watch this terrible Jets team, give me a break. I understand last year was painful, but people that are saying, oh, nobody cares about the Jets, when the New York Jets last year, when they were on primetime, they were the highest rated primetime games out of any of them. When the New York Jets played on primetime, those were the highest rated primetime games last year. So I don't want to hear from these other NFL fans that have no clue what they're talking about that nobody wants to watch the Jets on primetime. Because when the Jets were on primetime last year, statistically, the ratings were up as opposed to any other team in the NFL. So I don't want to hear, oh, nobody wants to watch the Jets, especially with Rodgers. They're going to attract viewers. That's why they're on primetime 6 times plus a 7th in London, which is a standalone game. Some other things to note. They don't play Miami until week 14. I thought that was interesting that they don't give them one of their divisional opponents until week 14. They get done with New England within the first 8 weeks. They play Buffalo in week 6. They don't play Miami until week 14. So it's going to be a minute until we see the Jets against Tua and that Dolphins team. Like I mentioned, by weeks 12, didn't elect to take it after the London trip. As I mentioned already, end the season at home for the first time since 2016. First 4 short weeks. That's something else I wanted to get to. I apologize. 4 short weeks in the schedule. So your first short week will come week 1 to week 2, then week 2 to week 3, because you're going Monday night to Sunday, then Sunday to Thursday. Your other short week will be week 6 to week 7, which will be Monday to Sunday. And then your final short week will be week 8 to week 9, which will be the Patriots. Then they will have to turn around and face the Texans on Halloween on Thursday night. So they have 4 short weeks through their first 9 weeks. So there will be a lot of football played. I mean, just in the first 3 games, the Jets will play 3 games in 11 days to open up the season. So there's going to be a lot of games. I feel like this season's going to fly. And I feel that is going to be the case because, one, I think the Jets are going to be good. And if we're having success, it's going to feel like the season's flying because you're going to have fun. It's not going to drag where during the games you're pulling your hair out. But I also think it's going to fly because the Jets have a lot of games in a little amount of time. They play Monday, then they got to turn around and play Sunday, then they got to turn around and play Thursday within just their first 3 games. The month of September is going to fly for the New York Jets. It's also because we're all going to look forward to those 2 home games at the end of the month, and that's going to be week 3 and week 4. So feels like this schedule is kind of be like going to blink of an eye. We're already going to be on week 13. And it's going to be like, what the heck just happened with the way things are set up there. Overall, I believe New York, they will have 8 1:00 games this year. Like I mentioned, 4 of those will be at home. When you look at the schedule once again, I will take my logo off of the screen here. Your 1:00s are Tennessee, Denver, New England, Seattle, Miami, Jacksonville, Rams, Buffalo. And that week 18 game again could pretty much be anything. So that's as of right now. 14 1 o'clock games again in 2022. So it's crazy, really, over the last 2 years, how much the NFL values the Jets with this roster. And yeah, I mean, yeah, that's, 3 of 4 normal games, as I mentioned, come after bye week, just one prior. That's Broncos week number 4, probably black uniforms against the Texans. So those are just some of the, I'm kind of weird like that. I like to break down the schedule, give you some weird facts, some weird numbers. So we'll give you that. Now let's break it down one by one. You start up with San Francisco, of course, on Monday Night Football. We talked about that a lot here. Be a showdown between Rodgers and that Niners defense. It's going to be a really good matchup. I think the Niners are the most talented team the Jets will face this year. Not even I think they are. On paper, they are the most talented team the Jets will face this year. If there was a time to face them, it's in week 1. You would want to face your toughest opponent early in the season, get them out of the way, and move on. And I will admit, while on paper, again, the Jets schedule to some doesn't seem overly favorable just because of the fact that they've got all these short weeks. They've got all these weird Monday night to Sunday night to a road Sunday game, 2 road games to having to play Thursday night. Like, there is some of that stuff. The Jets' schedule after San Francisco is very favorable in terms of the opponents they play. They face Tennessee, then New England, then Denver, then Minnesota. They should have no issue in my eyes winning those 4 games. Tennessee, especially if you lose to San Francisco, you should be a little frustrated coming off of a loss, right? Especially if you play them hard and you just fall. You should be frustrated, but you should be able to go out there and defeat a team like the Titans. I know they went out and added Tyler Boyd, added Calvin Ridley. They did lose Derrick Henry. They brought in Tony Pollard, but that is still a team that is headlined by Will Levis. You still have a question there. They brought in a new head coach moving on from Vrabel. There's still a lot of question marks. You're the better team in all aspects. You're the more talented team in all aspects than Tennessee. New England as well. You're the more talented team in just about every single aspect. Denver, same thing. More talented in just about every single aspect. And also, who's Denver quarterback going to be? Is it going to be Bo Nix? Is it going to be Jarrett Stidham? Is it going to be Zach Wilson? The things I would do to pay to see Zach Wilson against this Jets defense in week number 4, that would be hilarious. I don't think it'll happen. I think Bo Nix will start. I would be shocked if Zach is starting, especially if he's starting in week 4. Like, if he did enough well in the first 3 weeks to earn another start. Unless if there's injuries, I doubt Zach starts this game, but it is something to keep an eye on as the rest of the offseason and the season rolls on. But Denver, you should win. It's another home game. And in Minnesota as well. I know it's in London, and you really never know what those London games with the travel. It's always weird, the way London games are with teams and travel. There, a lot of times teams will go out there and they just don't show up because they can't get adjusted to the time zone, and it always feels kind of like a trap game. It always feels like the playing field's even just because of the fact that you got to go overseas, and sometimes teams just come out tired and kind of groggy. So you never know. But Minnesota, I mean, who are they going to roll out there? JJ McCarthy, a rookie against this defense, or are they going to roll out Sam Darnold, who is still very beatable? Quarterback wise, the New York Jets, after facing Purdy, will face Levis, either Drake May or Jacoby Brissett. Some mixture of either Stidham or Bo Nix. I doubt Zach starts, but if he does, even more so to the point of they should crush them. And then either McCarthy or Sam Darnold. You should have no issue beating those teams. So I actually think the NFL gave the Jets a break here. Like, after week 1, you get 4 teams that you should have no problem beating. It's not crazy to say here right off the top the Jets should be 4-1. And that's not getting cocky. That's just this team, this defense against those offenses, they should have no problem. And I get London's in there, like I said, kind of evens the playing field. Thursday night game, after 2 road games, they might be a little banged up, but still, these guys are going to get up. They should be able to get up for a primetime home opener game. I get it's Thursday night, but the energy is going to be there within the building. The energy should be there from the team. I'm not overly worried about the Jets having some sort of hangover or being worn down after 2 road games in a row. It's early in the season and it's the home opener. You should be able to get up and have enough energy for the home opener. Then after that, you go to Buffalo. Even with all the receivers Bills lost this year, I still think you view them as they're still the team to beat in the division just because they've won it every year since 2020. Like, they're still the team to beat. Even last year, where it looked like they were finally falling off, they still found a way to win the division. While I don't think the Bills will win the division this year, I think the Jets have a great shot. I think the Jets are the best roster. Until proven otherwise, the Bills are the team to beat. And that's just because they've been the team that have carried the torch since the Patriots dynasty of dominating this division. And until otherwise, you got to beat them. So the Bills are always going to be a tough matchup. I know when you look at the receiving core, it's borderline disastrous for Buffalo. And this cornerback core should have no problem shutting it down because they've been able to shut down Diggs and Davis in the past. But that is still a game to look out for because Josh Allen's still a top 3 quarterback in the world, or in the league, I should say, probably in the world as well. And if he's out there playing his game, they can beat anybody at any point. So that'll be a tough one. I do think the Jets and Bills will split. I also think the Jets and Miami will probably split. I think they'll both split those 2 teams. So we'll give the Jets the win here on Monday night. Week 7 will be a tough one against Pittsburgh just because it's Sunday night. And it's on the road. It's a short week coming off a Monday night game. Let's say the Jets win that Monday night game. You're looking at kind of an emotional win, probably over Buffalo, a division rivalry. You have to go from London then to a Monday night game that is probably going to be emotional there. I could just see the Jets kind of going into that Pittsburgh game potentially a little, I guess, I don't know, groggy, if that's the right word, kind of a little hungover and away from a London trip, then an emotional Monday night game against Buffalo, and then having to a short week go on the road in a tough environment. I think that Pittsburgh game is going to be a lot tougher than fans expect. Pittsburgh's defense is also really, really, really good. So I could see that one being tough. Week 8 against New England on the road, that should be a bounce back. If you fall to Pittsburgh, or let's say you fall to both Buffalo and Pittsburgh some way, I think they probably split those 2, whether they lose to Buffalo, beat Pittsburgh, or beat Buffalo, lose to Pittsburgh. I think they'll split those 2 games. But either way, New England sets you up for a bounce back opportunity in week 8. And in week 9, you've got Houston, Thursday night, another tough matchup. It'll be a short week, right? Houston, I think in my eyes, is, in terms of talent and in my eyes, is probably the team that I would pick right now to take the AFC. I'm really high in Houston. That's just me. I know some people are, very high in Kansas City still. Obviously, Ravens are still up there. We all know of course, the Jets, Bills, Dolphins, all those teams will be right in the conversation. I just think Houston, that they were that good last year. CJ Stroud's only getting better. The rich got richer, it feels like. Houston's going to be a really, really tough team. And I know the Jets shut down Stroud last year, and Zach Wilson beat him. So it feels like Aaron Rodgers, they should have no problem. But it is another short week. Now, it is for both teams, and you have to realize that. But that'll be an interesting one. Then you get Arizona. And that's another thing, too, I think, about this Jet schedule. While people want to sit here and say, oh, it's brutal. Like, after some of these tough games, you get I don't want to say easy games, because there is no easy game in the NFL. But, like, after the stretch of Buffalo and Pittsburgh, you got to go to New England. Let's say you lose those 2 games. That's a bounce back opportunity. And then after a short week playing the Texans, then you got to go to Arizona. That should be a win. So there is that stretch here of, even though the Jets have some tough opponents and there is some tough stretches, they kind of break up those stretches with some very, very winnable games. I don't look at a stretch on this schedule this year with the Jets, unlike past years, where it's like, man, that is a gauntlet where you've got to face, 4 weeks in a row of, let's say, San Francisco, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Houston, and then let's say like Miami. Like, there is none of that stretch this year, which I think is very favorable for New York. Week 11's Indy Sunday night. That'll be a lot of fun. Sunday Night Football. Hopefully that'll be, you'd love to go into the bye week with some momentum. Ideally, at that point, 11 games in, you're maybe looking at, I don't want to get too greedy, but you're maybe looking at a spot where you're 8-3. Maybe at that point, you're looking to get to 8-3. Indy with Anthony Richardson's going to be a fun team this year. You'll get Aaron Rodgers in his first Sunday night game in MetLife Stadium because Pittsburgh, of course, Sunday night's on the road. You'll get Aaron Rodgers pop up on the screen and say, Aaron, quarterback during the Sunday Night Football intro. So that'll be fun. And then your bye week. So a lot goes on in those first 11 weeks. And then to close out the year, week 13, you got Seattle. You're glad that's one home. That is home. Going out to Seattle, going all the way out there is never too fun. It's also a really tough environment. Seattle's interesting. They're kind of it feels in a way a little bit of a toss up. A team that is, I don't want to say they're not bad, but they're not good either. I would say they are, I would say slightly above average, a team that missed the playoffs last year, 9-8. They're kind of that 8-9, 9-8 range. You're coming off a bye. It's at home. It should be winnable. And the Jets have a real opportunity there from really week 11 through week 13, where you have that week 11 game against Indy. Then you have a bye week and you come out of the bye week and you've got a home game. Those 2 home games are really important because after those 2, 3 of your final 5 games are on the road. You then have to go to Miami in week 14, and in week 15, you got to face Jacksonville. I've said this. I think we split against Miami. Most likely you take Miami on the road or at home, and then you lose to them on the road. Jacksonville, I think, is very beatable. I think Jacksonville is going to have a really poor year this year. I do not like Jacksonville this year at all. I think there's a chance they finish in third in that division. I think there's a chance you can make a case Jacksonville might even finish last. And I know that might sound crazy, but I think if Will Levis is just decent and solid enough, they've got some pieces in Tennessee. The way Jacksonville collapsed last year, you have concerns about that organization internally, just from the way things collapsed last year. And I wouldn't necessarily say they got better this offseason. So I think you beat Jacksonville. Rams will be tough. I know they're kind of going through a little bit of a retool. Aaron Donald retired. Of course, that was, as we know, big news coming out of there. You've still got Stafford. You've still got Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp. We all know what those guys are capable of. The Rams will always be tough. Another matchup, though, that you are glad it is home rather than going out west. And on the road in Buffalo and at home to close out against Miami. Every year I say to myself, I always have a weird feeling that week 18 game is going to mean something. So week 18, just please beat Miami. Whether it's to win the division, I hope it's not a win and in, because if it's a win and in, that means the Jets are probably at 9 wins. And that would be pretty underwhelming for a regular season. Ideally, it's Jets are at 11 wins. Dolphins are at 11 wins. If this game is going to mean something and the winner wins the division, that is like the ideal situation. I don't want to win an in where you lose and you're out, because that would be brutal. If the Jets go into the final week of the season at 500, I think there's got to be a lot to go wrong for this team to improve 1 win from last year and to hit the under on the over-under of 9.5. So that'd be pretty disappointing. So just some thoughts on each game. We'll go through one more time and give you my official win-loss record. As I've talked about, like if I had to pick an easiest stretch, it would have to be week probably 2 through 5. Tennessee, New England, Denver, Minnesota, to me, are all games that New York should win. They're all games that New York should win. They've got the better quarterback. They've got the better defense. And that's in my eyes. You can also make the case, too, as crazy as it sounds, that New York might have the better coach in at least 2 of those games, Tennessee and New England. Gerard Mayo still unproven, as we know. And then, of course, Brian Callahan in his first year. Denver, Sean Payton, and in Minnesota, Kevin O'Connell. But quarterback-wise, I mean, Brissett, Drake May does not scare you. Bo Nix, Jared Stidham, Zach Wilson doesn't scare you. So I think that's probably the easiest stretch, really, of this, probably those 4 weeks. And if I had to pick a toughest stretch, it's probably You can make the case it's maybe that stretch of Buffalo, Pittsburgh, New England, Houston, where you've got Buffalo at home on Monday night, then you have a short week against Pittsburgh on the road, and you have New England on the road, but then you got to come back and have a short week against Houston. That's tough. You can make the case you're facing 3 playoff teams in 4 weeks, and then Pittsburgh and Houston coming on short weeks, which is difficult, especially with Pittsburgh being on the road. So, that's difficult. I would also say this. I think actually the end of the year to me, forever now, the Jets, really over the last 2 years, it feels like all the Jets fans have always been scared about the beginning part of the season. And I feel like this year, it's actually not the case. I think if anything, you look at end of the year, maybe as a rougher stretch where you've got to face Seattle, Miami, Jacksonville, Rams, Bills, Dolphins. As much as I don't think Jacksonville will be very good this year, and even though Seattle missed the playoffs last year, you could still make a case for all of those teams to make the playoffs. So really after your bye week and to the end of the season, guys are banged up. You're you're kind of just looking ahead towards the playoffs at that point or trying to fight for final playoff positioning. Final 6 weeks, the Jets can't look ahead. They're facing solid teams. They've got 2 divisional road games, and they've got to face a Rams team that is still very good, a Seattle team that, even though they missed the playoffs, still got some pieces. I know they got a new head coach, and I know times are changing there, but they're not a pushover. They're not a 4-win team. They're better than that. They're not Denver or New England or one of these really poor teams. And then, as I mentioned, Jacksonville, I don't love them. Trevor Lawrence, they're still won 9 games last year, or whatever it was, 8 games, 9 games. Like they're going to be in the conversation for the playoffs. So I think those final 6 weeks are on paper tough. But how many years have we talked about in forever now that we say, hey, 6 weeks, the end of the season, so easy. It always how it is. Injuries happen, bad performances happening. We're basing all of this on what happened last year, not really what's happening this season. We might roll around to week 10 and the Arizona Cardinals might be surprising everybody. They might be 5-2 or 6 and not even 5-2. They might be 7-1 or 8-1 going into week 10. And thinking to yourself, where the heck did this Arizona Cardinals team come from? Right now, we might say, Arizona Cardinals, that'll be a good win. If we can bounce back, that'll be sandwiched in between 2 tough AFC South opponents. But hey, who knows? Arizona might be the best out of all those teams. Like, you just never know. There's always that one game, and there's always that one surprise loss, too, on the schedule, where you go in there, you expect to win, and you lay it done. Happens every year. And there's always that one upset. Not that I think the Jets are really going to be upsetting anybody, because this roster is good enough to beat anybody. So, like, if the Jets beat the Niners, I don't think that's much of an upset, even though on paper they're underdogs. I don't think it's a crazy upset. I don't think, like, the Jets beating the Bills would be an upset. I don't think you're going to get an upset like, even Houston, I don't think would be an upset, But either way. So I kind of went through already and gave you who I think would win. So I would say you come out of the first 5 weeks 4-1. Let's say you go 0-1 Monday night. Then you win the 4. Right, realistically, you split against those 2 teams. 49ers are really good. And I'm not down in the Jets, but let's just say, okay, you lose the game against San Francisco. Being realistic, the Jets probably won't start out 5-0. Okay, that's just crazy talk. But being realistic, I don't think it's crazy to say the Jets can go 4-1 to open the gate. Then you beat Buffalo, we'll say 5-1. Now, I do think you lose to the Steelers. I think that Steelers game is going to be a lot difficult than people think. Coming off a short week, you're coming off of a London game, you're coming off of the Monday night game against a division rival. Those 2 games are going to take a lot of this Jet team. Going on the road in primetime to Pittsburgh, Heinz Field, or whatever they call it now, I'll call it Heinz Field. That place is always rocking. Pittsburgh, anytime an AFC North team, you got to play them on the road too. It's never easy. I think you probably lose there. So I'll say 5-2. I think you then beat New England 6-2. Houston, I think, is going to be very tough. I'll take a loss there. 6-3. Then I think you beat Arizona. I think you beat Indy. Then you go into your bye week. So you go into your bye week 8-3. Now you come out of your bye week. Seattle, I think, is a win, 9-3. I think you split against Miami. I'll say they lose on the road to Miami 8-4. I say they'll beat Jacksonville 9-4. Week 16's tough. Let's say they beat the Rams 10-4, lose to the Bills on the road 10-5, or 10-6 rather, and then beat the Dolphins in week 18. That would be 11-6. So I think 11-6, you could be looking at 12-5 as well. I predicted 12-5 last year. You could say, realistically, I think when you look at the schedule, like the Rams are kind of a toss-up game probably. Indy's a little bit of a toss-up game. Like they're not elite teams. They're not dominant by any means, but even though they're at home, they're not easy to beat either. I could see the Jets losing one of Indy, Rams, and maybe that's probably it. Like one of those two games. I think they'd probably split those two games. You split against Buffalo, you split against Miami. That's 4. And then Pittsburgh, I think, will be tough. And then San Fran. That kind of gets you 6 range. Now, hey, I could also see 12-5. And I'll admit, I might be saying 11-6 right now. I think 12-5 is realistic as well. But I'll probably guarantee you, when I make my full season prediction, I will probably say the Jets go 12-5. Because on paper, the only team that you could say is better than the Jets on paper on the schedule is San Francisco. Other than that, the Jets are better than all these teams on paper. All of them. Or at least match up well against them. So 11-6, 12-5. If you want more realistic, 11-6. If you want more green glasses on, 12-5. Really green glasses, 13-4. But that's a little bit unrealistic. This is a little bit unrealistic. You got to give some respect to some of these opponents as well. The Jets aren't just going to go out there and, go 17-0. But as we say, they'll have a chance every single week, and that's all you can ask for. So that's your 2024 Jets schedule. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. What are your thoughts on the 2024 schedule? Like it, don't like it. What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? It's crazy. There's not going to be many 1 o'clock games this year. It's crazy to think that, as of right now, the Jets have 3 technically 1 o'clock games at home. 3 of them at home. Potential 4th with Miami. But that Miami game could be, that's week 18. That is so far down the line. Don't even want to talk about that, but it could be flex. It also could be a Saturday game as well. So you really just don't know. And they get the Halloween game against Houston, so you'll probably see black uniforms in that one there as well. By the way, no holiday games for the Jets, no Christmas, no Thanksgiving, which I'll be honest, I'm okay with. Thanksgiving and Christmas, I always feel like my holiday would be ruined if my team lost, and I don't want that. I much rather on the holidays, as much as, watching your favorite team, turkey, football, all that seems great on Thanksgiving. I'd much rather just sit back and my rooting interest be on my fantasy football team rather than locked in on the Jets game and not so much focused on, the actual day itself. So I'm always kind of glad while it always feels like, oh, Thanksgiving football would be really cool. Every year you always wonder, oh, maybe they'll put the Jets on there, or Christmas Day game. I'm always kind of glad that the Jets don't necessarily usually get those holiday games, because again, it's day to spend with your family and friends, enjoy football, chill and watch football, not be intense, locked in the football and nothing else. Like I said, rooting interests on those holidays are all about the fantasy football team. So I'm kind of glad about that. You do have a Halloween game. That'll be Thursday night against Houston. All right. So that's it. Jets schedule. Lots of prime time. A lot of prime time. 7 standalone games in the first 11 weeks. 6 primetime games. So if you don't like watching the Jets on primetime, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And if you're a fan out there that's saying, again, that nobody wants to watch the Jets, you just do not know anything, because if nobody wants to watch the Jets, why were the Jets the most highest rated primetime games last year without Aaron Rodgers? Without Aaron Rodgers. And don't say, oh, it's because people wanted to watch him get. And don't say it's because people wanted to watch the other opponent. Well, then that's quite the coincidence that every week the Jets would play. Don't give me the garbage of, oh, people wanted to watch the Raiders or the Chargers. Don't give me that nonsense. Nobody wanted to watch those teams. People still tuned in. Dare I say America's team. All right, so that'll do it. As always, make sure to please like and subscribe. Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below on the Jets schedule. Always an exciting day. Always a day sometimes of overreactions. You get a portion of the fan base that's like, we're 13-4, 14-3. We're not losing. This is great. And then you get a portion of the fan base that's like, oh, man, they gave us San Francisco week 1. That sucks. They gave us all these primetime games, all these short weeks. This is brutal. And I'm kind of like, it's May 15th. I actually think the short weeks are tough. They are bad breaks. But I think opponent-wise, like I said, I don't think there's one stretch this season that's like a real gauntlet. And I think that's a positive. As of right now. Now, we might look and say, again, Arizona, let's say maybe that week 10 game. Arizona might be crazy. They might go out there and shock the NFL world, and they might be one of the best teams in football when we face them. You never know. There's always that surprise. So stay tuned. A lot more content coming your way. As always, hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, JETS, Jets. Thanks for tuning in.